Welcome to the Spiritual and Empowerment Living with Tia podcast, a sacred place and resource for spiritually centered women who want to go from the mundane to the magical life, for overcoming fear and doubt, reconnecting with the goddess, understanding messages from spirit, and uncovering your spiritual gifts so you can finally live the life you deserve. Hello, spiritual trailblazers, and welcome back to another wonderful episode. I have a very special guest who I cannot wait to introduce you to. Now, this topic is something that's been a long time coming. Hexes and other misconceptions with the Glamour Witch, Alexis Jackson. Alexis is a spiritual healer, singer, and owner of the Glamour Witch. You can check out her amazing YouTube channel, The Glamour Witch. You can also go to her website, theglamourwitch.com, and her IG and TikTok is The Glamour Witch LA, all of which I will post in the description for this episode. Alexis, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, and I really have to give a shout out to technology. I mean, just coming from a generation where, 80s/90s, and you had to, walk down the street or ride your bike to see if, so-and-so could come out to play.
Right.
And then it was just like, I can connect with anyone, anywhere, at any time.
Oh, man. It's
Love
so
it.
Great. It really is. I mean, I grew up in the 90s too, and I remember having to stand next to the phone because, there was no wireless phone. You were in one part of the room, and if you got a little boyfriend, you had to hide in one corner of the house so you could talk to them. I remember all that. And I remember too, when it started to transform, or watch the technology transform, and finally being able to get my first cell phone. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm cool. I'm one of the cool kids.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned boyfriends, because I remember this was 8th grade. And I told this guy, I said, call my house, but then hang up and I'll know it's you. And then I star 69 you.
Yes, star 69. Man.
Right. And for those who don't know, it's it's a redial for whoever called your home. But I forgot that I told him that. So he kept doing it. And then one time, my mom, she kept picking up, but she caught it before he hung up. And she goes stop calling my damn house. And I'm like, oh my God. It was him. I was like,
oh shit.
So then I think he said something can I speak to Tia? But he was trying to disguise his voice. So my mom said, she asked me, who was that? I'm like, oh, that was Jennifer. There's no Jennifer in my class. And my mom's not stupid. She goes, Jennifer has a pretty, what did she say? She didn't say raspy, but a deep voice or something like that. And I don't know. I think I lied and said she had a cold. I don't know. But yeah, she just brought back a memory.
Oh, but she had a cold.
Oh, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, that's I distinctly remember hiding in the closet to talk to boys and praying that nobody picked up the phone on the other line and was listening on the other side of the house. And then when we got, my dad was super into computers, we're a big tech family. So we all, there was 3 computers in the house at some point. And I remember doing instant message and I was just, and trying to hide my messages so that my mom and my dad didn't find out me talking to some guy. Man, the youngest, they won't know. They won't know.
They don't know. But I tell my friends, when I do have kids, they're going to be in a heap of trouble because I know all the technology.
Exactly. And it's changing rapidly. You got to keep on top of it too.
Yeah, you do have to keep on top of it and know the lingo. Maybe 1 or 2 things might slide by, but
right.
Not much.
But thank you, technology. We are so grateful for you.
Exactly. So, I love your name, the Glamour Witch. How did that come about? How did you get to this point where you're killing it, on so many platforms, and you're really into your Glamour Witch essence?
So, funny thing is I actually, it was at first I was water bearer healing, and I actually still have that account on Instagram. It's private now, but it used to be water bearer healing, and I was really, into Aquarius energy. When I made my logo, I was like, it's the Aquarian eye. It sees everything, and that's transcending what's going. So I had all these weird concepts, and I was just like, it sounded really noble and great and beautiful, but I was like, it doesn't really sound like me, and if, any of my friends or any person that's kind of like met me in real life and just hung out with me knows I love dressing up. I love a good gown. I love a good outfit. I'm a performer. I'm an artist. And so I always kind of bring this like glamorous element, and I do a lot of glamour magic because I perform, so when I would go on stage to sing, or I'm even doing a show or a play, I do glamour magic on my makeup, on my clothes, on my voice, and do potions and sprays and mists and lotions and all different types of stuff, empowering my rings and my jewelry. And I was like, I'm more of a glamorous witch. I see other witches out there like badass witch, this, and this, whatever. And I was like, but I'm just like marrying between kind of being a little bougie and stylish and luxurious, kind of like a chic element of myself. And then this other side of me that kind of steps into this more mystical, high priestess energy. And I it just happened. Glamour witch kind of just happened. I think someone one day just called me a glamorous witch, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I was like, I love that so much. And it's kind of just, stuck with me. I never thought that I'd be at the place that I was now with that name, but, it became the brand, it became everything. And, I started making YouTube videos with my phone, it was like actually like a year and a half ago that I really started to take it more seriously and start making more videos on a consistent basis. And then, people started to find it, which I don't know about the algorithms. I don't know about any of that. So I kind of just left it up to spirit. And I just said, look, if you guys want me to do this and you want me to be somebody in this community, you'll make it happen. And obviously I've done lots of rituals and spells to kind of help me, guide me on that pathway to find the right audience members, the right people who are looking to actually learn, and not just like, because this is before aesthetic, right? This is before it got super trendy to be a witch. I'm like, I really just hope that people can receive me. And, I lost friends. I lost people's respect, and, people were afraid of me and stuff like that. And I really just had to commit. And all this time later, here I am, the Glamour Witch, and so happy I never gave up on myself, because damn, I was not, I was like, sometimes I wake up and I see the shop, or I go on my Instagram and I see just like the response of people, and I'm like, wow, this is what happens when you just do not quit on yourself and make or any excuses for, oh, well, there are other people doing it, or, oh, well, I'm a singer, all these things that I kind of felt like I needed to compromise to do this work. And I'm so happy that I didn't have to, because man, like now I get to like fully be myself unapologetically, and then just let motherfuckers who can't accept me just fall to the wayside. I'm just like, like, woo, like, thank God.
Yes.
And 2020 will do that too. So
no, seriously, say it louder for the people in the back. I'm so glad that you stay true to yourself and be unapologetic. It's not easy. It really isn't. I mean, there are some parts that are just like, well, you know what? Then our friendship wasn't real from the jump,
Right.
And then there are other times that are like, dang, that's really unfortunate, but I had to be true to myself first. Right. And I tell people, even to the point that I'm at now, it took several years. And there is a growth portion that happens with that. And I'm always so thankful that I get to shed a little bit more. And that's what it sounds like, that you just dove right into it, that you just on like a step here, a step there. And like, this is really working for me. So was there any, and I know we're going to get to the hexes and misconceptions, but were there anything that you personally had to, overcome? Like, you know what? No, this is really me. Because I know you got called a Glamour Witch, but what was that point in turning that you were just like,
oh man,
yeah, this is it?
Well, I mean, the beginning of the journey was when I first came to Los Angeles, and I, I had no spiritual path at all. Like I didn't believe in anything. I had kind of rejected Christianity at that point. My mom's a pastor and my dad was Christian relationships coach. And so I was just like, I had been saturated with Christianity and I was over it. And it just didn't speak to me. So when I came to LA, I kind of was like living my life for me and not really worried about anything. And then I had 4 people die in a month's time, and it tripped me out because I was like, where did they go? And I had always grew up with spiritual abilities. I always had mediumship. So I always could communicate with people who have passed on. And a lot of times when, especially somebody that I know personally, they'll come to me like hours after they die because they know that I can see, and will just stand in my room or whatever the case may be, kind of just like, hey, like I'm on the other side, like hey. And at first, when my friends, all 4 of them, one of them being kind of like a father figure to me, passed away, I just was like, obviously the normal amount of sadness that comes with losing somebody. But then it was like they were coming to me, talking to me and being like, hey, like, we really want you, this is like, we want you to know that it's okay to be sad, and we want you to know that we're okay, but like, this is a big moment for you. This is this period of time. Like, I know it's really sad. Like, all these people are not in your life, but you're going to see that this is a big moment for you. And I didn't understand what they meant by that. And it really upset me. Kind of went on a spiral, depression and, drinking a lot. I was in college at the time, so I could kind of mask that I was drinking a lot because it was college. And finally one day, like I was just really at my lowest. And one of my friends whose mom was a shaman, which I didn't know at the time, she was like, you know what? Hey, look, just come over to my house and we'll have margaritas and we'll watch TV and we'll just chill. And I was like pretty much done at that point. I didn't really want to be alive. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't care, So she invited me over. I kind of just did it to appease her. And I also just thought, well, if I'm not going to be here for very much longer, maybe I'll just do some fun stuff with people that I like. I go to her house, walk into her house, and like immediately there's like spirits in the house. And I was like, all right, this is already starting to be something. I was like, you guys know your house is haunted. She's like, yeah, but they're cool. I was like, okay. So she takes me to meet her mom, immediately hit it off with this woman. She's so beautiful, amazing. And they're giving me a tour of the house. And finally they take me to the back of the house, and there's this giant back house shed looking thing. And it stood out. It's very prominent. And we just kind of danced around it. We went on the other side, went to the pool, and I'm kind of just like, why are we not going to this room? And I kept asking, and they were like, they kind of avoid it. So finally they were like, okay, and now it's time to take you into the room. So they go in before me. And as soon as I go to walk into the room, I literally put my first foot into the room, I was like, and I say this as, it sounds dramatic because it was dramatic. Like, it was like electricity that shocked me in my entire system and my whole body. And I couldn't go into the room. Like, I started crying and I collapsed to the ground, and I began to weep so intensely, like I was a child again, like I was an infant, like I had gone back to my infancy. And I couldn't even breathe. Like, my eyes were closed almost. Like, it just felt like I literally was like coming out of the womb a little bit. Like, those first moments where you're, not all of us remember being born, but that moment where you open your eyes and you're in the world, you're seeing the world for the first time. And I'm like sweating, tears and snot bubbles coming on my face. And finally her mom comes and like kind of scoops me up, and she's like, okay, you're ready to come into the room now. And I just was like,
Wow.
what? I was like, what do you mean now? Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, your vibration was really low. And the way that the room is set up, we use this room for shamanic healing. It's built to raise the vibration of anyone that comes in here. So you had to drop all of the things that had been, you had been holding on to enter the room and to be able to stay in this vibration. And she is like, but I think something else happened too, because I'd never seen anybody react like that. So I came into the room again, tried it again. And this time I felt a type of peace, and just like, it was like I hadn't really known what breathing was until that moment. It was like I had been holding my breath my entire life, waiting to take that first breath into my new self and my new life. And I was just like, what is this? Like, what just happened to me? I had so many questions. I was fascinated. She started teaching me about crystals. She did a tribal drum, a guided meditation. She basically became like my coach at that point, and taught me about magic and gave me little tidbits here and there. Like, I come over every weekend and she'd teach me. And at some point she was like, okay, now go and do your own research, go and explore, go and find what's right for you and where you're supposed to be. And I did, and I started to go to more metaphysical shops. I started researching crystals, and it really did change my life. And I felt like, oh my God, like I figured it out. Like I was like, I found why I was meant to be here. It was like I became the person that I was always meant to be. And I was like the old version of me died in that moment of trying to go through that door, so that the new person could be born. And I had never felt so happy. Obviously there was moments in the journey that were arduous and difficult, because, when you start to become a different person, you realize that there's a lot of old baggage and programming in the mind that has to be worked through. But it was like, I never doubted for a minute that I was supposed to be a practitioner of magic. And I never doubted for a second that I wanted to be a witch. I had shame about it at first, because the word witch, there's just the negative stereotype on that. And then also too, like, I didn't know anybody who's practicing witch. And, at the time, the boyfriend that I was dating at that time, he was fine with it, but he also was like trying to keep it hidden from like our friends and his family members. Like, I wasn't really allowed to talk about it. So like, I was still kind of struggling with it at the beginning, but I was so certain that was where I was supposed to go. And, things started to transpire, doing ritual after ritual, spell and divination and all these other things, and seeing it open up my life and all these things work and unfold for me that I didn't even think was possible. I was like, this is not just like woo-woo, feel-good, self-help, like BS. Like, it was working. And the way my brain works is, I don't really care about necessarily all the theory behind it, as long as it actually works. If I can do the ritual and have a relationship with it, and have kind of like the science experiment relationship, and I get the result that I was intending on getting, and I get it every single time over and over and over again, that's enough for me, and I was having so much success and finding so much peace and empowerment in myself, that it also created its anxiety, because now I have to take responsibility for my life. Now that I know that I have the capacity to change my reality, I have to take responsibility for everything that I like and do not like in my life. All the people that I'm surrounded by, all the negative behavior that I allow and accept, the ways that I play myself and negotiate myself out of doing the things that are going to put me into the place where I can be the highest version of myself. All that, I had to take responsibility for it. And it really forced me to grow the fuck up. Like,
right.
Like, that's the only way I can put it. And it created rapid growth. I'm 26 years old, and it created a type of growth in me that I don't know that I would have had without that, without seeing the magic of the universe at that time. And, you know, so many years later and so many success stories and positive rituals later, here I am, you know, and it's only gonna continue to go up from here. I already know.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. And I was just thinking like, man, I remember when my grandparents passed away. That's what really triggered my research. I had visions and you know, premonition, dreams, and you know, the whole claircognizant thing as a kid. But when they died, something happened, and I never forget. Like what you were saying, the father figure friend came to you. I knew, so my pop-pop was missing for a while. We couldn't find him. And he was also grieving from the death of my grandmother. But I smelled his cologne as if he was standing next to me, and I knew he was no longer here. So I really relate to that, and I really appreciate that. And a couple of things stuck out to me was when you said, you know, now your friend's mom said, now go. And then responsibilities. And that made me think how that ties in so well, especially to the title, because so many times people don't want to do the research and they don't want to take full responsibility for their lives, which is easy to say, oh, you know, the devil, or, oh, you know, it's him, it's her, it's negative energy. And to some extent, yeah, someone does do wrong, you know, but that's the beauty of this path, is that we have the ability to change what's going on. We don't have to know all the ins and outs of, you know, how it's happening. It happened. So when it comes to hexes, you know, how do you look at hexes? And let's talk about the actual definition of it, because that is a huge misconception, and people act like, no, I can't do it.
Well, I will say this. My personal opinion on hexes is I don't have a problem with performing baneful magic. It's in, you know, this is how I see all forms of magic. Is there's no such thing as good or bad. Good and bad are human concepts, and they're ways for us to kind of make excuses for behavior or pat ourselves on the back for things that we've done that we think that make us good, right? You know, people will, you know, use these types of spiritualities as a way to determine their goodness or their holiness, or whatever the case may be. And really, good and bad is subjective, because what could be good for me could be bad to you, you know, and vice versa. So hexing is, in my opinion, a form of protection magic and battle magic, you know. And, you know, I always make this analogy is like, you know, we see people who go into the professions of fighting or do these types of things, and not because they need to fight. They're not like soldiers, you know. It's not like back in the old days where, you know, men were learning how to fight or women were learning how to fight to protect their tribe. Now people are just learning how to fight just because, right? Because, you know, exercise or whatever reason that they have. But anyone who's taken any form of training, whether it be jujitsu, karate, whatever the case may be, will say that in training, it's mostly about discipline. It is about learning to protect yourself, but it's learning how to empower yourself. So in a moment where something could potentially happen, you have the confidence to know that you can handle that situation, protect yourself, protect your loved ones, but they're always going to teach you to de-escalate before you decide to attack, you know? And if you come into the practice so you can learn how to kick ass, you know, you might get your shit kicked in, you know, and it's the same way if you go to a kickboxing class or whatever the case may be, just so you can learn how to beat up your bully, you might find that, you know, you get over cocky and you don't learn the discipline of it. So then you start to go after people who you actually cannot defeat, you know, and get beat up. So I think it needs to be looked at in that way. You can't just, do it willy-nilly. You can't just go after everyone. Not everyone is somebody that you want to fuck with. But I think it's very important that when you're practicing magic, that you learn how to defend yourself and how to protect yourself, and you learn how to fight. And, also back in the day when these things were made, they were made by the oppressed, the disenfranchised, the marginalized individuals who created these traditions, Black and brown individuals who were not seeing justice in the literal sense, at this point, people want to say like, don't do hexes because of this or that, because the karmic scale and all sort of stuff. And I just think in my mind, if that was the case, then motherfuckers would have been paid for slavery, the Holocaust, the entire genocide of the Native American people on this land that we are on currently, and so many other places around the world. The scales were never balanced, and still to this day we're still dealing with the aftermath and the backlash of all of that started this whole shebang. So for me, I don't really see it as bad, because the ancestors created as a way for us to find and rectify imbalances in the spiritual realm that go beyond what man can do. So if I know that my cousin is getting beat up by her boyfriend, and every time we go to call the police or whatever, something happens and he's able to get away with it. And we've done everything that we possibly can do to remove her from the situation. She doesn't feel strong enough to leave. The whole thing that happens with abuse. To me, as a witch, as a person who practices magic, and I know that there are spells out there that could not only bring him to justice, but also remove him from her life, I am definitely going to bust out the biggest, fattiest hex of all time to rectify the imbalance. Same thing with the justice system. There's a lot of spells on court cases and different things like that. Also protecting from police brutality. There's all different types of things that are meant to balance the scales, so to speak, that we don't really deem as an issue. But the problem is that anytime you do magic, somebody is going to have some type of a negative reaction. There's always going to be some type of a negative counterpart to whatever you're doing. Whether you do a spell so that you get the job and you beat out the competition, maybe if you hadn't done that spell, this other person would have gotten it who really needed it to take care of his family. We talked about that in the live. And, you beat him out because you did magic, and you had that upper hand over him was the magical knowledge that you had. And so you took away his livelihood, and now he can't support his family. Some people would say like, oh, wow, that's so messed up. But in the reality is there's nothing that you could do in this universe that does not have some type of a consequence, whether that be deemed as positive or negative. That's up to you. Hexing and cursing is no different. There is a consequence. And if you learn how to properly do it, you have discipline with it, you ask yourself the right questions about why you're doing it. And you also check yourself, because look, I always say, if you're a petty person and just regular in life, you're going to be a petty witch. You're going to be a petty practitioner. There ain't no difference. Don't blame it on the hex. Don't blame it on the magic. Don't blame it on the culture of witchcraft and spirituality. It's about the person. And if they have something within them that makes them want to come after people merely because they looked at them wrong or, irritated them a little bit, that has nothing, because they would have found another way of targeting that person, whether it be through spirituality or through mundane.
Absolutely.
So I don't think people need to worry about hexing in the way that they're worried about it right now. But I will say, I think that for newcomers, people who are just starting on their path, like I'm talking 3, 4, 5 months into the practice, maybe hexing isn't the right way to go if you haven't learned how to properly protect yourself from the things that could happen from a hex. Because shit comes back. It does. If you don't know how to protect yourself from a potential return to sender energy, and you don't know if that person is also under the closet witch. You know what I mean?
Surprise.
Exactly.
Like, surprise, bitch. bitch.
Exactly. You don't know what's going on, and you don't know how, like, who's protecting them in the spirit. So you just want to make sure that if you're gonna do it, you're doing it for the right reasons. Like, if that person really did do something wrong to you, or they stole from you, or whatever the case may be, you need to make sure that there are other things that you, if you're gonna do that, if you know, like, oh, I'm about to hex this motherfucker, just make sure that there is not possibly another route that you can take prior to that. Because if you don't know how to reverse a hex or protect yourself from the backlash, it's really not worth doing, because it creates more problems than it solves. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, if you're going to do it, don't be stupid about it. Just take responsibility. Read a few different books. A book that I was recommended by the Witch of Wonderlust was Utterly Wicked, and I forget the name of the woman who teaches it. And then there's another one called Cursing and Crossing. And these two books, I'm gonna see if I can find the actual titles of them. These two books to me are really great because, one, they teach about some really heavy stuff, and it's not a light hexing. They got some stuff in here that'll make your jaw drop, but they do talk about etiquette and protecting yourself, and the questions you have to ask yourself before you go about doing this work. So, the misconception is that, you do one hex, you're going to go to witch hell? Like, what is that? Like, what is the worst?
It's a construct. It's not
right.
real.
You're going to learn. You're definitely going to learn. But, that's just how life works in general. Anything that you do, you're going to learn from it. But I would just say, if you're trying to hex your ex because he left you, and you're mad about it, like, maybe that's not the first thing you want to do, right? Maybe the first thing you want to do is heal yourself, work on your healing, work on the anger and the bitterness and the frustration first, so that you can look back on, like, now, if your ex sexually assaulted you, left you, took your money, maybe you want to balance the scales a little bit. But if it's just like it didn't work out and you're upset about that, or, you find out that they're gay, you're mad about it. There's a lot of things that people will just be emotionally upset about, but later realize, you know what, actually, it wasn't that big of a deal, in the grand scheme of my life. And it didn't kill me, and it didn't create the type of emotional turmoil that will take me a lifetime to get over. This is something that I can move past. I was just heated in the moment. And that's why, a lot of people in the practice try to discourage people from doing hexing, is because typically you're coming from an emotional space. You're using that anger and that frustration and that rage as a power boost for the spell that you're doing. And it's such a powerful energy, and it's such an uncontrolled energy that it can have types of effect on people that you weren't expecting. And your hex could really fuck somebody up, and then later on you're like, oh, I didn't want it to go that far. And it's like, too late. Too late.
And because you didn't do enough research, now you don't know how to bring it back. And it reminds me, going back to the analogy with the job interview and getting a job, that's no different than someone knowing someone and they get the job and you're better qualified. Like that's their little, even though it's not magic, it's like, oh man, like they had something, that other thing that I didn't have. It's like, we had the magic and someone didn't have the magic. So, it can come in many forms. So, I really want people to really understand what you're, just again, like co-signing what you're saying, because to just write it off like, oh my gosh, no, it's so bad. No, it is what it is. It's magic. Like we make it what we call good or bad is what happens. Same thing with the universe. Right. You want something, that might be bad to someone else. If you're like, oh yeah, I want to manifest a big home. I want to manifest a lot of money. And someone's like, money's the root of evil. You don't need a big home. All you need is, so
Right.
we can go
Right.
on and on and on, which is why it's so important to understand hexing and get over this misconception that is so bad. Because I tell you, I have definitely used protective magic for my friends. And they had come back and say, thank you, because I felt something. Like, I never forget one time I was in a bathroom, especially when I'm really close to them. And I just stopped. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen, but something was going down. And I just did like a whole bunch of like swirly protection, all that. And it was like 2 weeks later, something went down. And then, we talked about it, and they were just like, thank you so much. Like, I know it would have been so much more worse if you hadn't, like warned me and did what you did. So, it's definitely beneficial. It's bad for the person, but they deserved it. They're harming good people. So
see, and I always say too, especially when somebody knows that I'm a witch, I'm like, man, don't do that. Like, don't go to the extreme with me. Just, if you don't like me, if we're not friends, if something happens, like, that's fine. Like, I'm not that kind of a person in my everyday life. Mm-hmm. And also, for me, hexing and cursing and those things, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of time for me to wash that energy away. So I have to be really clear of what it is that I want. Mm-hmm. I recently had somebody, we won't name the person, but, I recently had somebody try to take my musical property from me because I would not have the type of relationship that they wanted from me. Mm-hmm. And, we see that in the industry a lot, mm-hmm. Women being abused in that way and having to either take the abuse mm-hmm. So that they can keep their career or do what it is that they want to be doing, or completely lose what it is that they're doing, or lose their property, or, get fired, or whatever the case may be. There's these like ultimatums. And a lot of times, especially men that are operating at a low place, they understand that. And they use that timeline, that game, as a way to get what they want from women. And, to me, that is a really great place to exercise the power of baneful magic, because, this person is already abusing power. They're already mm-hmm. taking advantage. And, if they're doing it to me, they're definitely doing it to other people. I'm not a special case. And, mm-hmm. It wasn't like our relationship ended like there was this big blowout fight. It was just more like, hey, I don't like you. I just don't like you romantically like that. And if that's going to be a problem, like, maybe I should take my music someplace else. They didn't want to hear that and refused to give me the music that I made. It's my property. And also I had already paid them. So I was like, okay, you stole from me. You tried to, blackmail me into like having a relationship with you and having intimacy with you. And now you're you try to turn it back on me and make it seem like I went crazy mm-hmm. as a way to, how guys be doing. Oh, she's crazy, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She crazy. You got to watch out for her.
She's one of those crazy bitches.
Yeah. It's always like, she's the crazy one.
I'm like,
not him.
I'm like, okay, I am crazy when I need to be. So you gonna see how crazy. And I'm just like, I don't ever need to fight with a dude. I'm not that kind of a person. I don't need to have a fight with you. But trust me, in the spirit realm, you gonna get a delivery. Ding dong, express.
Right.
Get a delivery. And, I did. I rectified that situation. And obviously, like, I haven't gone back to double check my work and see, like, oh, is it affecting that person's life? And, because that wasn't even the issue. Mm-hmm. But I do know that it did land. And I do know that at the end of the day, it did rectify the imbalances. And for me, moving forward, it set a precedent that I will no longer allow myself to be in a position like that, and really make sure that any person that I'm doing music with or doing business with understands that dynamic is never going to happen. And now it's like, okay, I need to do magic off top Because before I was just like, I'm trusting this person. I knew this person. I grew up with this person. So I just trusted that, you know, they weren't going to do anything shady. You know, the person was really talented and understood my sound. It was all these like things that kind of lulled me to sleep, so to speak. And now I have a better understanding, you know, and I've rectified that imbalance even within myself. And I'm like, okay, now going into it.
Yeah.
I'm coming in geared up, like ambulance, everything's ready to go.
Boots the ground, a suited and booted.
Where they feel like, ooh, she came in here with a suit of armor. I was like, yep, and what? And my sword's ready to go. I'll pull it out, ready to go on you. Queen of Swords here. So, you know, it gave me, it empowered me, you know, and so that can, you know, that's a really great side effect of baneful magic, but it's not the goal. It's not, the goal shouldn't be like to empower to get my, you know, it's more just like there's an imbalance that has taken place in the ether, and I'm not going to allow this. I'm shifting it back to where it was before this person decided to operate in this way with me. But, you know, again, like I said, it really is, there's so many case by case situations that we could speak on. Like, like there's no absolute. I think the only thing that people need to concern themselves with is, where are you in your life, and who are you at the end of the day? Like, if, like I said before, if you're a petty person, if you're somebody who's vindictive and spiteful and you love stirring up drama, and if you're that way, that energy doesn't just dissipate because you're a magician. You know, just like if you are a Christian, you know, these things are not personalities traits. Spirituality is not a personality trait. It is a facet of the things that you're interested in, and it's a part of your spirit, your evolution as a human being, but it's not your personality traits. And those things take time to work through, because you got to go back to the root of why that is the core, you know, a part of your life currently. So, you know, being a Christian doesn't make you automatically a good person. You know, I hear people all the time being like, oh, I'm a God-fearing, you know, this woman and man or whatever. I'm a good person because I'm a Christian, or I'm a good person because I'm Catholic, or I'm a good person because insert spiritual whatever. And it's like, that's not, we can't, like, that doesn't mean anything.
Not at all. Not at all.
It means nothing.
At all. When I see, when someone said that, I go, you're probably cheating. And I've known people who, like, it's like a friend of a friend, pastors cheating, you know, the pastors, you know, what's it called? Embezzling money.
The pastors.
I'm just like, you know, people getting on in the church, but I'm like,
but I'm God-fearing.
God-fearing. This is why I tell people when someone goes, oh, so-and-so's a nice person, I'm like, I don't care for nice. You know, like, I'd rather get to know them first. Because a lot of nice people can be passive and aggressive. And don't get me wrong, there are some genuine, nice, good-hearted people. But every time, at least this is my opinion, this is what I experience. Nice tends to be backed with, oh, that's, you know, Christian, nice, good person. But yet they look down on people. You know, they come with so much judgment and stipulations and things like that. Like, that's not a nice person. That's not Christ-like.
And I don't really appreciate just like, you know, and sometimes I hear nice and I'm like, oh, is this the person a people pleaser? Is this person somebody who just agrees with everything that everyone says because they're too afraid to take responsibility for their own opinions? Like, you know, to me, that doesn't, I don't, in my opinion, that's not nice, you know? So, you know, and that's why, you know, to just come full circle with it. It's just like, yeah, everything is so subjective, but I think the real issue is that people spend their time trying to quantify things by good, bad, nice, you know, not nice, that they're not looking at the true integrity and character and values of the individual. They're looking at these surface level things that we all inherently can be. We can all be nice. We can all be good, and we can all be bad. You know, when the situation calls for it, it can arise in all of us, which is why, you know, we say, you know, I would never hurt someone. I would never do this. People always say, I would never kill somebody. But if you were in a situation You know what I mean?
Right.
You might find, if someone that you love was in danger and you had no choice,
you
you might find yourself in a position where you ready to kill a motherfucker. Maybe
Right.
you didn't want it to happen, but it just happens. It's the capacity of a human being. And without putting judgment on the capacities of human beings, and without making excuses for human behavior, I think what we have to remember with hexing and cursing and crossing and all these other things is, you're always going to find yourself in a position where you're going to see the consequences of whatever it is that you do, and so cool. If you believe in rule of three, cool, whatever. And I'm not even talking about rule of three. I'm just saying something is always you're always gonna at some point in your life feel like, damn, like something's going, like, why is this happening to me? Right. And or I feel like I'm crossed up, or I feel like someone hexed me, or I feel like someone cursed me, or whatever. You're gonna feel that at some point in time, but you didn't die. You know what I mean? Like, you're okay. And also, if you are somebody who, especially if you're watching this and you're a practitioner, it's so important for you to learn about it so that you understand the symptoms, so that you understand all the telltale signs, and that you can reverse that shit. Because yes, there are spells out there that can, that promote the end of a person's life. But the power of being in this spiritual path, and the power of being, educated to all types of spiritual modalities, is that you're actually allowing yourself to have more knowledge and wisdom on how to protect yourself, your loved ones, how to see clearly what's going on around you. And the more knowledge you have, the more power you have. So even if you're not going to practice hexing and cursing and all these other things, I would have at least one good book about crossing and hexing and cursing, to know, one, what people are doing, how it looks, what kind of spell work do they do, what kind of shit that people, how they would use it. Sometimes people come in your house and sprinkle some shit in front of your door. You might not think anything of it. You might think it's a little weird, someone's trying to sprinkle some shit on your front of your door, but you might not think that it's a curse. You know what I mean? You might not ever sweep the front, if your front steps. You know what I mean? Yeah. So having this knowledge empowers you, makes you a stronger practitioner. And then if you ever do need to use these things, and you ever do desire to balance the scales, you don't have to feel like you're debasing your whole practice. Like, right. You can't just take one part of the practice and abandon everything else. Like, this is the part of
exactly.
like it's so Abrahamic. Like, the Abrahamic religions are all about, remove all the bad and only the good shall remain. And
that's not the world.
It's not the world. It's not how even nature works. But in spirituality and also in witchcraft, we understand the benefit, the power, the beauty of both sides of that coin. And we find a way to honor it and harness it so that we can have the most fulfilling and powerful life, and the most protected life as we possibly can. That is the power that comes with witchcraft. If you're going to practice this, you cannot throw away the other half of this practice, right, so that you can feel good about yourself. Then maybe you need to go find another spiritual practice. But baneful magic is just as much a part of witchcraft as a healing ritual or a money spell or a love ritual or whatever. And some people think love magic is, a form of cursing or a form of, baneful magic.
No.
I'm like, well, because, people are like, you do a love spell on somebody, it's like kidnapping them kind of in a certain way. If they didn't feel that way about you, now you've kind of captivated, taking them hostage. And it's like, a love magic is like a whole conversation that we could get into.
I will definitely invite you back on the show to talk about
because that's a whole nother thing.
That is definitely another misconception and a whole nother thing.
Because, man. So I would just say, people who are looking at the craft and want to be a part of this, when I first started, I was afraid. I was afraid to watch like YouTube videos. I was afraid to just watch YouTube videos talking about hot foot powder and gopher's dust and all these other things. I was so nervous about watching those videos. And I was like, why am I nervous about watching, like something's going to happen to me if I even like look at it?
Right.
You know
That's
what I
part
mean?
of misconception. You're right.
I was like, I'm already in the fucking craft. Like I've already surpassed the point of no return here. Like,
Right.
where everyone already thinks I'm going to hell. Like I can just look at something and not have to take it in as my identity. And I think that's people have so much fear that if they even learn, if they even try to understand what it is, that somehow they are, you know, they're doing it. Like I'm doing hexing if I read a book on hexing. I do hexing if I have a book in my space. And it's like, no, you're somebody who's inquisitive and you're well-rounded,
Mm-hmm.
and you understand that life is not black and white. It's not cut and dry, that there is a lot of things going on, and you would like to explore in totality what this practice has to offer. And that's a really, really strong place to be, and a really great place to be at when you're starting the practice and when you're learning, is to not throw away any of the information. You may not like the information, you may not use all the information, but it is important to know all of it so you can get a full picture of what you're actually diving into, what you're committing to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I also taught my brother a lot, and we're both level 2 Reiki practitioners.
Nice.
And we were talking about energies and things like that. And I taught him about energy vampires. And this is why it's important. Like you said, even if you don't practice it, please read up on it, because I see so many times women talk about red flags and what is it, gaslighting and all these things. So anyway, I was with my brother. We were at a cafe. This was several years ago. And we were sitting on a stool where you could look out the window. And this one guy who worked there was so tired. He was taking out the trash. It was late at night. And this guy came out of nowhere, started talking to him, but he kept touching his shoulder as if he was like taking lint off his shoulder. And I said, oh my God, Marcus, he's an energy vampire. He's sucking, literally, you can see him going like, ha, ha, ha. And then he's touching his shoulder and he's just like picking the energy off of him. And the guy couldn't even realize it, because when he's already tired, which means his energy feels already low, which means his defensive mechanisms are already low, and he probably doesn't know about energy vampires. This is why I tell my brother, hey, when people hug you, make sure you know them a little bit. When you shake people's hand, like gear yourself up, protect yourself before you leave the house for when you have to shake someone's hand, because it's important. It's really sneaky. I don't want to say sneaky. It's really stealth-like. Unless you know what to look out for, you don't know. And then, you're now you're going to be even more tired because someone just took your energy, and also to the listeners, take note that this is also, the baneful magic, the hexing protection. This is what we do when we tried all other things, communication. No, sometimes people just don't get the message because they don't want to. So now we're taking it up a notch. And, it's to get the person out of our lives, or at least keep them at bay if we can, because sometimes maybe they're a family member, we have to see during the holidays.
That part. Yeah, no, the energy vampires out here are real. And there's so many different levels to it, right? Like there's the people who are energy vampires and they don't even realize that they are. They're just they're just so empty themselves that they're looking for anything outside of themselves to satisfy this gaping hole that they have within themselves. And they don't realize that they're a black hole sucking everything in, and so as much as like maybe that's more innocent, it does not make it less dangerous, because in my opinion it's a little bit more dangerous because they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to cap off, and they do it to people that they care about, and then they lose friendships and people around them and they don't understand why. And then there are people who are intentional about that shit, whether it's like, on a psychological level or whether it's like actual spiritual psychic vampires and actual creatures that exist inside of human vessels, you know, because a lot of people, especially, you know, people, we don't like to talk about these things, but you know, if you're somebody with a weak will and you are somebody who's not really well protected and you surround yourself with a lot of people who are dangerous and toxic, you could find yourself being the host for a lot of negative spirits. And, you know, I live in LA and I've seen that. I've seen straight up, I've gone to an event for a show or something like that and literally seen like, oh, this person is possessed, you know, and it's not the type of possession that you see in Hollywood where they're like, ah, you know, like growling and everything like that. It's like, this person is calm. They look like a regular person. You wouldn't really be able to notice, but they're odd, and everybody kind of knows that this person is like, something's not right, and people feel weird around the individual. And this person, you know, the chaos always seems to follow them, and you know, people always seem to get hurt or sick or this or that or whatever the case may be, you know. And if you're not a person who knows how to look for those things and you don't understand what the hell is going on and how to defend yourself, you are a victim just off top. And that's why, you know, things like hexing, cursing, banishing, protection work, these forms of magic that some people would say are more aggressive are so important. You know, I would not go into a sketchy neighborhood without my knife. You know what I mean? Like, I know what could potentially happen. And if I needed to protect myself, you know, obviously, you know, there's people who have guns, you know, there are people who have, you know, types of protection systems in their home, alarm systems, all that stuff. We understand that there's danger in the world. That doesn't evaporate because you're spiritual, you know, and we have to stop diluting ourselves and believing that, oh, well, you know, nothing's ever going to happen to me because I'm spiritually protected, but I've never done any spiritual protection. And I don't even know what anyone could be doing. You know, I get about 15 people in my DMs per week saying that they're cursed or they've been hexed or, you know, can you do a spell for me because I'm crossed up? And I'm like, you know, I ask just a few simple basic questions only to find out that not only are they not any of those things, but they literally brought it on themselves by bad behavior. They literally are just like, the universe is teaching them a lesson right now. They're going through a dark night of the soul where they're transforming into another version of themselves. And so everything becomes uncomfortable in their life. Friends start to fall away. And it's actually a positive thing. It's actually meant to promote the healing and the transformation of where they're trying to go. Or literally they assume that someone who doesn't like them is sending negative energy at them, and it's like, you just gave your power away to that person.
Oh my gosh.
And you don't even know.
That makes me think of because you disagree, you have to be a hater. And that's like something that popped up, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago with like the next wave of social media, boom, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, now I even have to say disclaimers. I am not a hater. I just don't like it. And you know, that's another misconception. It's like, people, read more and you will understand that you're having a dark night of the soul. You're having like a rebirth. We really all go through this. You know, you did, I did, you know, and if I hadn't read it, I would have thought like, man, this is some crazy shit here. But the more I did the homework, I understood like, I just got to get through this and connect with, you know, whether it's like a goddess or like archangel or whatever through reading, or sometimes they just appear to me in my dream like, oh, okay, this is who I'm meant to work with. But so many times it's like, oh, one little thing happened, let me go ask for an answer. And I'm not saying people can't ask questions, but it's like, okay, people, and we were talking about this before we recorded, technology, you had that in the palm of your hand, you can Google it. Before Alexis and I, we had to go to the library or order encyclopedias. Like,
or find whatever video we could find, on YouTube. Hopefully there's a video on YouTube, that you could, someone's talking about it, and even then you don't want people to see your search history. You know what I mean? It was just like everything was so hush hush and everything was so private and quiet and secretive. And now it's so trendy that people, people who, especially people on TikTok, I don't mean to bash TikTok, but it's just kind of like, it's 60 seconds. You can't really learn.
Right.
Like, you can learn a lot. There are really good influencers on the app talking about magic, but it's like, you want to start your practice entirely off of TikTok videos. Yeah. But YouTube exists, and like, you don't want to watch a video longer than a minute or 2 minutes, and it's like, people are giving you real information. There are people out here who have been in the practice for 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 plus years who are willing to give you information and guidance that are on other platforms who you can actually trust. Mm-hmm. And they're not just, no offense to teenage witches, because there's like, I wasn't a teenage witch. I don't even know what that's like to be a teenager and be a witch, but I know for damn sure that I'm not taking advice from a teenage witch. I'm not. Mm-hmm. They're still learning. They're still going through the trajectory. And the type of rituals and spells that they're doing are not even things that I would need in my life, right? Mm-hmm. So, then there are these people who are blowing up, who are, teenagers and just coming into the adult world, telling people not to practice certain types of magic or being the one teaching people magic. And I think that's great. But I think that if that's your entire experience with witchcraft, you probably are missing some stuff. There's a lot you're missing, and you can't just like call yourself you can call yourself a witch. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. But if you really want to do this, if you want to practice witchcraft, you need to learn about witchcraft. Mm-hmm. You can't do one manifestation like scripting and say, oh, I'm a witch, or buy a couple crystals, I'm a witch, or buy a tarot deck, I'm a witch. I'm like, okay, cool, you're a witch, but like, are you practicing witchcraft, magic? Are you doing this work, and have you had a relationship with it to a capacity that doesn't rely on somebody else's validation and confirmation? You're in my DMs and all these other people's DMs, but you don't really experience it for yourself, because that's how we that's how we got to the place that we are now, where we can talk about these things with people and share this knowledge, is because at some point we had to put the books down. We had to turn the fucking computer off, and we had to do the magic and have a relationship with it. So we had experiences and a connection. When people talk about their book of shadows, I have multiple book of shadows that are filled with spiritual, technique and rituals and spells and all types of stuff that I've done. And I look back on those things, and some of those spells I would never do again, because I'm like, I was in a different place. And also those just weren't hitting the way that I need it right now. You evolve. But when you're looking at TikTok as your grimoire, you save 25 different 60-second videos, and TikTok is your grimoire, or YouTube, or you're allowing somebody else to be the validation for your magical power and your potential, you are missing the biggest and the most rewarding part of this path. It's finding and discovering your magical potential. And if you're going to give your power away, this practice is literally meant to give you back your power that has been taken from you. And you're going to give it away again in the practice to other practitioners, even me. And when people come to my DMs and they're like, oh my God, and, like debasing themselves in front of me, like trying to, worship me as though I'm a goddess, I'm like, look, I appreciate the recognition. I appreciate the love and the support, but do not ever do that to me, because I don't respect that. And two, I'm not looking to make followers. I'm looking to make leaders. I'm looking to make people who will take the lessons and the wisdom that I'm providing that's coming from spirit and do something bigger.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
make something that's going to impact and potentially even impact and change my life. That's more of a compliment and more of, you know, empowerment than for you to come in and ask me 1,000 questions because you just, I don't know, I'm new and I don't know, I just don't want to do it wrong. And this is and this. And it's like, you can't do it wrong. You have to fail. You have to fail. You have to practice.
Yes.
You have to try for you to even know what it is that you're capable of doing. You want to do the science experiment, but you want me to do everything in the science experiment for you.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I will go to the church of the Glamour Witch. I'm just, just saying. No, I so agree because then you run into gatekeepers. And I was talking about this in a virtual summit I was in. I said, you know, of course you can take the shower, you can take the bath, you can wear the red, blue, white robe or whatever, you can get the color candle, but at the end of the day, you have to do what you connect with, what you are drawn to, what you think is right, because there are so many paths, right? Like part of my spell casting is dancing, right? I am moving my hips, my chakras, you know, depending on what I want to attract, you know, bring in, you know, sometimes it's me staring at a candle, you know, so
right.
You really have to think about what you want to do. And then sometimes I do the whole shower with the eucalyptus and all that, and 3 straight days with the moon and whatever planet, you know, or whatever day or something like that. You can do it as intricate or as simple as you want, but that comes with time. And then I still have books with tabs that I use for reference. But if you're just going to ask someone, like you said, and I know that feeling, that group project, and you're doing all the work and someone wants to take the credit, it's like, okay, pump the brakes here, you know. But, you know, it's also, and I don't know if it's part of like that next generation where they just don't want to do something wrong because with social media, everything looks so perfect and polished and things like that. That's why sometimes I do my IG stories and I don't brush my hair. I'm like, you know, listen, guys, we're just chatting here.
Hey, it doesn't matter. Like, shit, it's what's coming out my mouth. It's not on my head. Like,
right. This is not a polished YouTube video. We're just, you know, just chatting. And the thing is that, you know, sometimes people get caught up in the aesthetics, which, don't get me wrong, is a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful.
But you have to make sure that you also getting your point across. If you're all about the aesthetics, make sure you can marry the two. You know, if you're just, you know, doing things like, okay, I got my candle, or okay, like this person said that, you're not getting the full knowledge. You know, you need to cross-reference. I tell people that all the time. Read as much as you can. Cross-reference as often as possible. There are way too many paths, and you are way too smart. You're like, we are smart beings, you know, so give yourself that space to really dive into it. And if you're in a place where, you know, you had to be an undercover witch, get the ebooks, you know, get the ebooks.
Yes.
Get a different Gmail account and then go on YouTube under that Gmail account. You know, like there are different ways of doing it, but you have to do the homework. You have to do the spell casting. You have to do whatever it is you need to do, because otherwise you're just looking at love and light and, you know, no, I don't want to look at the shadow work and all this other stuff. Listen, I tell people I am a spiritual person, but, you know, don't get in my face, because me saying, no, you know, I'm sending you love and light, someone's punched me in my face, is not going to solve the problem.
Right. Exactly. And you know, I think the misconception is that, you know, being spiritual means that you have to just tolerate BS. And that's why, you know, I think there's such a negative connotation on hexing, because it's like, well, it's not spiritual, it's not wholesome and good. And it's like, well, technically, if we're basing it like that's like a logic that's based off of religious, you know, whatever, we're not a part of that. Right. We're already being demonized. We're already being told that our shit is bad. Everything that we do, they're doing. They're just calling it something else. Right. They're just, labeled as something else. And, here we are now casting judgment on ourselves in our own practices that have, and I'm not saying like we need to go back to blood rituals and sacrificing animals. Like people still do that. There are people in a lot of traditions, especially African traditions like voodoo and hoodoo, that will sacrifice chickens to deities and stuff like that. I'm not really into that. And I don't need to be into it to be in the practice, but I know about it. I know it exists. Right. I'm not afraid to research the history and understand why people do those things. Okay, this is what this deity or this entity that they're calling upon, this is how they access that spirit. That's that ritual. And if I'm not down with that, then I'm not accessing that spirit. That's not the way, you know what I mean? You can choose not to do these things. But I think demonizing and judging it in and of itself, or the people who practice it, it just is like, it's silly when we're already the marginalized category of spirituality. What are we doing, guys? Like, this is silly. And there's much worse things going on the planet that don't even have anything to do with spirituality that I think we could direct our energy towards to try to change, instead of trying to change spiritual practices that really aren't they aren't like people are just doing it out of petty reasons. They were created out of the suffering and the oppression of people. And we are still in the suffering and oppression of people currently. And I don't think it's wrong for us to still be using those things that our ancestors gave to us. I think we just have to question ourselves and use our own moral compasses to understand why we're doing it. Because, whether or not it backlashes on you, it does affect your soul. It affects your spirit. It affects what you remember doing that, and you remember seeing how it negatively impacted that person. Like, it just psychologically mess you up. It might not even be spiritually, but it just fucks with you. And you'll always remember, I was so petty and so angry that I fucked up somebody's life just off of some random ass shit. Or I didn't have all the facts and I decided to just hex without any information, and that's why a lot of practitioners will say, don't do these things if you're new. A lot of practitioners will stay away from teaching that publicly. I don't have any videos on YouTube for hexing. I have protection magic, merely because I know that there are people on my channel who literally find me on the recommend page and that are not even interested in magic. And then they're like, oh, I'm not even going to, I don't want to do magic at all, but I saw this one spell and I'm angry right now. I'm going to curse this person.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be a part of that, but I am not also trying to tell people like, don't do it. It's bad. A threefold rule. Cause I'm not Wiccan. Right. I don't believe in that. And if I did, I'd be like, okay, well then where's all this justice for all the Black and brown people that have been continuously dying on this planet at the hands of white colonizers who should be getting their threefold by now? Right. Then got their threefold. Okay, so for me, it's like, especially Wicca, which is a very white part of the practice, I'm like, look, if that was the case, we would be seeing the justice. And it's not happening because we give our power away. We give the power away and we allow the scales to be unbalanced because we're too afraid of looking at our other options. We accept what things are. And so we keep getting the short end of the stick because we're like, oh, it'll get better. Oh, and we never want to look at our roots. We don't want to look at our spiritual practices connected to our lineage and our heritage. And we're so comfortable in our lives right now that challenging that and invoking the spirit of the ancestors who made these curses and these hexes and these crossings is more daunting than just accepting. It's like, I would rather, some people are like, oh, I would rather just sit here I think people are waking up from that now, obviously, but
Yes.
you know, it's still, there's people who are like, I'd rather sit here comfortably and just deal with it. Oh, it'll all work itself out. Then make the radical change and shift that they actually deeply desire in their life. And that may come from, one, getting your hands a little dirty, fighting for what it is that they believe in, and maybe even getting knocked down. Yeah. Nobody wants to go to war. Nobody wants to fight for anything, but revolutions don't happen comfortably from your home. Like,
yeah, speak on it. Yes,
you know what I mean?
It's so true, because especially for the and it's like I had this conversation with my friend a couple of years ago. We were talking about entrepreneurship, and we were saying that by the third generation, a lot of the businesses fail or don't do as well because that grandchild didn't see what the grandfather did. Right. But the son saw all the hard work that his dad did. And that's what I feel like during this is, like, so many people say, oh, well, you know, people are so radical. Why are they doing that? It's like, no change happens casually, you know, especially when it's someone who's being oppressed. No, like the oppressor doesn't, or the oppressee doesn't go, hey, man, you know, like, I'm really tired of this. Like, can we like figure out something? And the oppressor's like, hell no. You serious? Right. Like, you know, so then you got to kick down the doors, you know, you got to take a stance. And that's what happens. So many people, you know, when they hear the word challenge and change, these C words are like, oh my God, I don't want to have a confrontation. It's like, listen, you have to dive into yourself and understand who you are, what you want out of life, what doesn't work for you, what does work for you, and the people who you really want and need in your life, and that feeling be mutual. Because I got to tell you, before I really like dove into spirituality, before I even knew it was called spirituality, I was telling my best friend at the time, I never forget this. I was waiting at the bus stop, and I said, you know, there's something missing. I can't put my finger on it. I got a great job. My social life is active. You know, I have really no complaints, but there's something missing. And it was that spirituality, which led me into, you know, deeper and deeper remembering, because a lot of this stuff came natural. I was doing a knot tie spell. I just did it. And then I learned like, oh, that's a thing. So, you know, and we can dive into past lives too a little bit, but all this stuff is remembering. There's nothing new age about new age. And it really, I get so irate when I see people say, oh, you're like, don't do this, don't do that, it's the devil. Okay, when you blow out candles for your birthday, that's candle magic. Okay, yes. Let's just start there. All right. Honeymoon. Okay, like when people used to get married, you know, in ancient times, they would get married like during a full moon. You would get a jar of honey, and for a month, you would be excused from your social responsibilities. Honeymoon. So from full moon to full moon, you were good to be with your, you know, spouse. So, you know, over the years, that term got watered down, but we still use these terms. So it's like, and the days of the week, it's like, okay, people, you're doing all these things anyway, and you don't realize it. So before you start knocking witches and you know, other practitioners, what you know to date really just got repurposed. So just calm yourself down. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like there's a lot of misconceptions, and people assume that the new age is new. Mm-hmm. And I think too, like, especially in LA, like I'm around a lot of people too who, and I don't mean to make this about race, but you know, I'm around a lot of white people in the spiritual community, in the new age community, who are taking from other people's cultures and then trying to switch it and market it as like, you know, like this new thing that they created. Mm-hmm. Which then goes into this new age, right? You know, I'm teaching about manifestation, or I'm teaching about these things. And then you get into the class and they're literally talking about other people's cultures, but not telling people, right, I got this from Asian culture, I got this from Native American, I got this from Indian culture. They're not letting people know the truth. They're trying to make it seem as though they've like they made it. Right. And you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for these classes from a person who is the colonizer of those places. You know what I mean? And that to me is a destructive energy, and also is catering to this negative energy that's going towards the I guess what people would say the lower vibrating aspects of all these traditions. It's like it's such a colonizer thing to pick and choose all the nice and fluffy things about other people's religions and then put them together in your religion and say, oh, I made this new thing, it works. And it may work because it works. It's worked for these cultures for hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
But then you want to toss out all the things that you think are bad from those people's cultures, tell them that, oh, we don't do that, you're not going to go to heaven, or you're not going to ascend, or you're not going to do whatever the case may be. But it's like, yeah, but you're taking from these cultures who are rooted in these understandings. They understand the duality. They understand the need for the darkness and the light. They understand that they need the low vibration and the high vibration. They understand those things can't exist without each other. And you're trying to remove it all. Like it's no longer about spirituality, and now it's becoming about your personal ego and this drive that you have to put yourself on this pedestal of goodness. And that is not necessarily the most noble thing that you can be, is good, because people use the guise of good to manipulate and abuse people all the time. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes, and then they look down on people, and then when someone comes along, and I had just saw like a post about this earlier. Someone's like, oh, I saw a post where someone cussed, and I feel like I got targeted, and it's just like, but they weren't directed towards you, and look, she could have had something going on with her in the past where maybe throughout her life someone down talked her, but that's just an example of a partial example of when someone they want to go the love and light route and then deny everything else. And I look at it as, but what if they're a good person, a decent person, and that's how they express themselves, and you're getting hung up over cuss words, and then there's I forget this lady's name, but she's prominent in like the new age realm, and she said something like the only bad thing she does is like drink coffee or something like that. I'm like, first of all, I do not believe that for one moment. Whenever someone's like, yeah, the only bad thing I do is, okay, first of all, coffee isn't bad. I mean, yeah,
red flag.
I know, right? You put too much cream and sugar in there, maybe. But I'm just like, honestly, just be who you are. I was raised in an environment where if you are a decent person, then you're good in my book. Everything else, however they want to live their life. We're not to judge. Like sometimes people see people doing something and it's different. They look at it as, oh, I could never do that. Oh my God, that's just. But there's so much more behind the scenes. There's a whole background to that got stripped over the years. Like I saw an ad a couple of years ago for what was it, yoga with wine or horse yoga, something like that. And a lot of people from the what was it? I think it was the Indian community were just like, okay, that's not yoga. That's
yoga wine with horses.
It was like wine and yoga, and then it was horse and yoga, and then I think it was bear and yoga. Like they were doing all this combos with yoga, and it's like that's not the practice. That's not how that works.
Oh my wow.
Okay. And it's crazy. Like maybe if you want to personally do that at home, like, whew, did my yoga. Now I'm gonna get a glass of wine, but to hold a class and like, oh yeah, haha, like let's do this. That's not it. And this is why, exactly. And this is why I'm so glad to have these conversations where is, us debunking, we're having a conversation and we're explaining to people like, hey, look, in some ways you are already doing this.
Right. I saw a video too today of like somebody literally doing baptism and then they tagged hashtag witch talk to like convince, like, oh, all you need is Jesus. And I'm like, baptism is like, oh, witch ritual. Like it's like a pagan ritual of like cleansing yourself before to receive the gods. You know what I mean? Like that's like, you guys are so funny. Like, you know, and I just think like, I'm like, cool, you know, you wanna call it something else, or you want to add something else onto the back of it to make it seem like it's not that. If you want to do that, that's fine, whatever, but don't demonize the thing that you took it from.
Right.
You know, you want to like witches don't do baptisms. Come on, what do you think a spiritual bath is? Y'all real crazy out here.
Like, you real funny.
Y'all real funny. All types of stuff. They want to talk about manifestation, all sorts of stuff. So y'all speak it into existence. Come to the altar.
Right.
You know, who wants to come to the altar today? You know, and anointing oils, holy water,
incense,
all these things.
yes,
Incense, candles, you know, all these things, and even the way that the form of music, you know, and that's something that I always loved about church was the singing, because of how powerful the voice is, and raising the voice together, and music is so powerful and what it does to people. And I think that's why people flock to, you know, churches, is because it's kind of like one of the only places where you can kind of get that type of satisfaction other than like a concert or a show by a professional singer. But all of it, it's like, it's all spiritually like a ritual, an incantation, a prayer. It all works, you know, all of it works. I think it's just another way of doing a similar thing, which is trying to touch and tap into divine energy and to the divine, God, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it. That's up to you. But I think where shit gets fucked up is when people try to say like, my shit is better than your shit. Right. You know, or, you know, you're going to this bad place when you die. Like, first of all, I am of the notion that there is definitely hell exists, but that is here on planet Earth. You can experience hell.
Say it again.
Right here. You don't have to go anywhere. All inclusive experience. You know, they'll bring it to your front door. Okay, you can experience hell right here. If God really wanted us to go to hell for our sins, he shouldn't have made us sinful. You know, off top, you made us, you designed all the shit, and then you also put in the little caveat of free will. And you we were gonna do our own thing anyways. You made us good and bad. You know, you put all these other things on the planet. You gave us magic. You gave us spirituality. You gave us the earth and nature and all these other things. We see animals in the wild are taking advantage of the types of things that we deem are evil. And do the animals judge themselves? No. They just understand, like, this is what it is. This is a part of the circle of life. And life will continue no matter what. And yes, there are some things that I'm like, damn, that's kind of fucked up. But also, if God really was trying to send us to hell for all this shit, he could have just saved himself some time, because technically we all would be going there. All of us would be going to hell if that was really true, you know, because there's no way to not fuck up in this life. There's just no way. And it's not even worth thinking about what's going to happen to you when you die while you're living. Like, you spend all your time trying to do good deeds or whatever the case may be for a place you're going to go when you leave your physical body. Like, what? No. You're supposed to enjoy the fruits that was created by the universe. You're supposed to create and love this world and be a part of the journey and experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. You're supposed to be here, be present, and not worried about what's going to happen when you die, because you don't know. You're not gonna know until that time comes, and when that time comes, it's gonna be too late anyways. And what I know, what I've experienced is, you know, when I speak to people, when I have mediumship with spirits who have left on the other side, the one thing that is resounding across the board is they're always, especially people who are just recently passed, they are like, I was not expecting it to be like this.
Mm.
I had no idea it was going to be like this. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be. You know, it's another plane of existence, but it's not at all what I thought it was going to be. And I was so worried about this moment. And I can't even believe I spent so much of my time worried about it. Now I wish I could go back just so I could live my life more fully, not worried about this part.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend our livelihood, we spend our money, we spend our time, our energy, our heart, our soul, worried about what's going to happen when our body decays. That we don't have the spiritual experience that we came down into this world to have. You know, and that's why spirituality and magic and witchcraft and all these other ancient practices are so powerful and have existed and prevailed for so long, is because they understand that there is so much that you can do here in this reality that you cannot do in the spiritual realm. That's why people come down, spirits come down onto this earth and manifest themselves as human beings so that they can have this experience. You know, let us not worry about where we're going to go back to. We've been there. That's our spirit's already been there. We got dropped off. Like, why are we worried about, we're going to go back? Like, it's okay. Be here in the now and don't worry about hell, you know, because you might just experience it right here. You know, if you're really,
it's funny you say that, because I'm like, man, I hope this is my last incarnation, because people here, wow, man. I imagine my like mansion. I'm like, how did I get convinced to reincarnate once again? I'm like, something must really be needed, because I'm whew. I really think about that sometimes. I read a book about that and like how some people get asked to come back. I'm like, who convinced me so I could smack them real quick?
Yeah, no. I'm always like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is gonna be my last time. Then I think about it. I'm like, I might come back one more time.
Yeah.
And I feel that in my spirit. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. I'll probably come
just
back
let me remember everything. I know. I'm like, just please always let me remember. Always let me remember.
Let me figure it out. You know, and that's why I always think about and I always tell that story is like, because I did feel like in that moment when I walked into that room and I had that electric shock of the system, that was the moment that I remembered. That was the time that I was like, oh yeah, oh snap, I do have a purpose here, and here it fucking is. And obviously, you know, I didn't understand the totality of that, and I'm still living my life, but it was like this. Okay, I get why I had to go through all the tumultuous, ugly, horrible things prior to this. I now understand what the my friends who were coming back to me were telling me. They were like, this is a catalyst, this is a good thing. Like, I know I know you're sad, like obviously it's sad when someone dies, but like also like, bitch, this is it bitch, like this is your moment. Like and I was like, no, this is awful. I'm in pain. I don't want to be here. Like, I can't even believe I'm experiencing something as awful as having multiple people die in a month's time. Different people from different periods of time in my life, different ages, none of them were the similar type of death, like it was all just different and shocking and bizarre. And I was just like, this is just like a joke. Like it felt like it was on purpose. And looking back on it, I'm like, I don't know that I would have made the changes that were necessary had I not been through that situation. I never would have went to my friend's house if, I wouldn't have needed to go there.
Right.
I wouldn't have experienced the full freedom of the alleviation of that had I not been at that moment of despair. Yeah. I wouldn't have been hungry to research. Even if I went there and I had that, I wouldn't have been hungry to research that further if I didn't have just went through a period of time of not even wanting to be alive. you
Mm-hmm.
know, that recharge and that resurgence of like, oh my gosh, this is out here, this is on earth, this is
Right.
available.
And it's like such a relief too. I remember I wrote about this in my first book that like for when I was a kid, like maybe 9, 10 to around 13 years ish, I just knew my family was going to be like, hey, Tia, like this is, us, like I just felt like I didn't think it was magic. I just felt like something, magical and like in that space, and nothing happened. And when my grandmother, so it didn't happen until after my papa passed. He passed like a year and a half after her.
Mm-hmm.
She came into my dream and she said, Spirit has something to show you. And I saw a full moon and 2 crescent moons. And it was like, it was just so beautiful. I just described it all in the book. And that's when I knew like, oh, snap, I got work to do. I got 2 crescent moons there and 1 full moon. And so like, yeah, it's the freedom that came from that when something goes on in my life. And yeah, sometimes I forget like, oh, T, you could have just, done like a ritual or, like something to help you with this. But when I remember, I'm like, wait a minute, remember who the hell you are.
Right.
And it comes back and it's that freedom, that I'm taking responsibility. I'm not looking at anything externally and like, oh yeah, the devil did this. And like I said, yeah, of course life happens. Of course, sometimes we trip, we fall, but overall, I'm claiming this power. I understand when certain things happen. When people get, a little rude, I don't take offense as easily. I'm like, you know what? They're probably going through something. Or you know what?
Right.
I'm at this point now where that's not even phasing me unless they get like a little bit beyond themselves. It's like, all right. But,
Right.
when it's like a small thing, I'm like, you know what? I'm not even worried about that person. And it's just so amazing. Like you were saying, the freedom that comes with that. Then you walk into the world, sort of like Michael Jackson and Billie Jean, like you're just lighting up the floor, but maybe it's glitter for you or something like that. And it's that it factor that no one can really put together about you, but they just know there's something magical about you, and that's what I love.
Yeah. I think that the beauty of being here in this life is that there's so many opportunities to be surprised at how beautiful it can get, how powerful it can get, how magical it can be. There's so many ways and so many opportunities to just be astonished by life, on the good and the bad side, and I think we have to remember that, the power of being in this path and being in spirituality over, I would say, religion, which is a little bit more restrictive and, controlling and kind of judgmental and harsh. The power of spirituality and taking responsibility for your own journey is that you get to develop and shift and move according to the vibrations that are happening within you, instead of being forced into a certain way of being. You get to develop as you are meant to develop as a soul and an entity. And the beauty of that is, in my opinion, more fulfilling and more satisfying than having someone constantly be there to tell me like what it is I'm supposed to think, what it is I'm supposed to do, and every aspect of my life. Like, obviously sometimes I get lost and I need support from people around me, but that's much different than, I need you to tell me what it is I'm supposed to do. Otherwise I'll sit on my ass and not do anything, And some people are they come in like that, they're newer souls, right? And they haven't been here that many times, and so they need somebody to tell them what to do because they don't know. They just don't know. And that's okay. But I think we're coming into a period of time right now in this world where that is going to not be enough. You can't just expect someone to tell you what to do, because now there's so much misinformation at all times. You hear one thing and then someone's saying the exact opposite that's supposedly also a reputable source saying something opposite. There's such a giant gap in like what is true and what's real and what is being perceived, and also what the narrative is that's being pushed. That if you don't have a discernment or intuitive skills, and if you're not tapped into what it is that you're supposed to be doing in this life, it's going to feel like a ping pong battle, back and forth, being thrown. All the shit that's happening in the news, all the shit that's happening on the planet, all this and that, or whatever the case may be. Like, this year has been hell for some people, and it has been a come up for other people for that exact reason. Because some people buckled down and they put their nose to the grindstone, and they redirected their focus towards what it was that they wanted to experience, as opposed to what was being projected on them from the outside world. And I'm not saying like they were like neglecting the injustices that were happening around them, or they didn't believe that there was an issue happening in their country. What they did was they said, you know what, I'm going to be a part of the positive timeline and the positive source of energy that comes out of this situation, to show that even in the midst of chaos and confusion and, pain and suffering, you can make something powerful and beautiful and impactful and create abundance and prosperity in your life, and not even be touched by that energy. I know people who have not, I don't know any person personally in my life who has been inflicted by Miss Rona. And I don't know anyone in my life, thankfully, who has been impacted by the injustices that are currently happening in our world right now when it comes to the police brutality and just the, crazy shit that's going on. I'm lucky to be one of those people. And I don't take it for granted by any means, but I don't subscribe to the energy of like, I'm going to push off my energy, my focus into absorbing myself into exactly what powers that be would like me to be distracted with while they do other things. Because if I'm doing that, I'm not fulfilling my life purpose, and I'm not seeing the other sides, and I'm not tapped into my spiritual guide. Doesn't mean that I won't protest. It doesn't mean that I've not protest. Right. It just means that can't be the sole source of my experience. And if, more power to the people who protest, more power to the people who are out there on the front lines helping with this situation. But there has to be a switch. You have to have a switch. And spirituality is that switch. That is the power of that. It's not a personality trait. It's not going to allow you to, if you're a shitty person, you're going to have to deal with that. If you're a racist or a sexist or a xenophobic, you're going to have to deal with that. Spirituality doesn't absolve you from those responsibilities, but it does allow you to pull back and get a full picture of the purpose of your existence here and what it is that you're contributing. And if what you're contributing is pushing negativity and like oppression back into the world, spirituality helps to rectify that imbalance in you, and it creates a shift in you that then impacts the world around you. And that's why people say, if you want to change the world, you change yourself. Yeah. And we're getting a great opportunity right now as a collective on planet Earth to actually change yourself. What better way of doing that than literally the entire world being on lockdown? The entire planet being like, pause, stop, halt. Now it's time to heal. Now it's time to stay in your space. Now it's time to work on you. It's time to face yourself in the mirror every day. And you're not going out. You're not getting these stimuli and these distractions that you can use as a way to avoid dealing with the fact that you don't want to be with your partner, or dealing with the fact that you don't actually love this job that you've been in all this time, or dealing with the fact that like actually you don't feel like you're valuable unless you're around a bunch of people who are hyping you up all the time, or you don't feel beautiful or worthy unless you are dressed up and doing all this. You know what I mean? We started to see things about ourselves that we just were never going to see unless this thing happened. And some people took that energy and they were like, oh, I know what this is about.
Yep.
I see what spirit is doing right now on planet Earth, and I am up for the challenge, and I'm not going to hide away from this. And other people were like, nope, it's going to go back. It's going to go back to the way it used to be. It's going to go back. No. You know?
Wished.
They're like, ah!
I am definitely one of those people. Like, when something bothers me, enough, I will definitely speak up. And the thing is, so many people are afraid to take a stance. And this has been a time where I've been taking a stance more than ever. Like, I never had a problem with, like, once I got over being the friend who wanted to be there for everyone all the time, no matter what, because I was one of those people who just wanted to be like the best friend ever. Once I got over that, I'm just like, wait a minute, that's not right. So this has been a time where I've been taking a lot of stances, whether it's like backing off from talking to certain people, whether it's, and who cares about some certain Facebook friend? Like, sometimes you just friend people over time, but I want you off my news feed. I don't
want to see your post because you posted an essay paragraph, and who the hell is reading this? I'm not.
Right. and that's one of the things people really have to remember, when you're hexing, when you want to use protective magic, when you just want to just go out in the world, take a stance for something, take responsibility. Yes, I believe in this. No, I don't agree with you. Yes, I'm speaking up for myself. And we have to get over that guilt feeling. We have to get over, what will someone think about if I do this? It doesn't. I feel like The Rock. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Because we really.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say we really have to get into that zone.
Yeah, we do. We have to get into a headspace where we're more concerned about taking responsibility for our actions, as opposed to just like, what will other people think of me for doing this? You know what I mean? It's like, look, I think at the end of the day, that question, if we're willing to take responsibility for our actions, is always going to rectify. Even if we're like, I'm going to do this fucked up thing, but I'm going to take responsibility for my actions. The universe hears that, universe sees that and is like, oh, okay. Oh, you gonna take responsibility for your actions? Okay, go ahead, do it. And let's us do our fucked up shit. And may let us do our fucked up shit for years, only to then be like, okay, we let you do your fucked up shit. Bow. You know what I mean? And hit us with that backlash. But if you can take responsibility for your actions and you know why you're doing it, and you're coming from a wholesome place, no matter if you're doing it from a fucked up place or not, that type of energy is seen by the universe. And based off of where you're energetically at when you put that energy out, you don't need to be worried. You need to be worried if you're doing it for petty reasons, but you don't need to be worried if you're doing it to rectify imbalances and to create balance where it is lacking. That is where the I think people know it as karma comes in. Because if you're just out here fucking with people and being an asshole just because, there's karma that you're collecting. But if you're balancing the scales for an injustice that happened to you that wouldn't have been rectified any other way, there's not necessarily a backlash, but to the backlash of the person who created the injustice and the imbalance in the first place. And I think that the universe supports balance over human ideologies of good and bad. And because we're so far removed from that, and because we want to believe that I'm a light worker. Not all of us are light workers.
Right. Exactly.
Not all of us are working with the light, and that's totally fine. And I have friends that are light workers. I have friends that are healers. I have warrior friends, and I would consider myself to be a warrior friend as well. I'm not that person. I come with love and light energy when I need to come with love and light energy. But I have 2 military parents. I don't know any other way but to defend and protect the people around me and to love them and to take care of people who cannot take care of themselves.
Right.
As much as light work is great, light work is just not going to hit the way that defense work is. And we need everybody to play their part in this battle that we are facing against entities and powers that would like to see human beings stay mindless and numb and trapped in the matrix. That's the real enemy here. It's not the magic itself. It's the people who want to keep the magic hidden. Those are the people we should be focusing our energy at being angry at or shaming, because they would like for us to not even understand about our emotions, about our bodies. They don't want us to know about what's actually going on outside of this planet. They don't want us to know any of those things. They've created a system in which we are so lulled into comfort that we don't ever challenge or try to expand out of that. And now it's 2020 and motherfuckers are like, actually, why not? Why not explore something else? Because all the other shit you guys have been selling is not fucking working, and also is full of fucking loopholes and weird ass shit that doesn't even apply to me as a human being. I'm actually open, which is why we're seeing a rise in people being open to spirituality and witchcraft and magic and all these other alternatives. We're seeing a rise in those things because people are tired. And their brains, like a switch has happened in the human consciousness that, you know, powers that be are like, oh fuck, like how are we gonna fucking bring them back? And I think that we're past the point of no return. There's no way we can go back now. The leadership that's been in power, creating a lot of toxicity, the actual climate, what's happening with the planet, you know, just all these things collectively, there's just no way. It's like an incubator for change. And when you understand that as a spiritual individual and you understand that as a practitioner, it's your job not to sit. It's not the time to tell people like, oh, well, don't do painful magic because it won't ascend to the higher timelines and you won't be able to. And it's like, no, this is revolution energy. Spirit literally made all this, like they set this whole thing up for us. This is the ascension. This is the ascension right here in this now moment. And if love and light energy was all it took to make change, look at history, look at astrology, look at all these things that have been placed in front of us.
Right.
None of that has ever been enough. You know what I mean? There's always been some type of a sacrifice or a price to pay, or blood, unfortunately, that has been spilled, or people who have died in the name of creating that change.
Right.
Great leaders and influential, people in our history literally getting assassinated, being killed as a sign. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, JFK, these people are people we worship. Malcolm X, we worship these people and we talk about them endlessly. You know, in school books, none of them had a happily ever after story. The people who were radically changing our planet, they got killed because they were too much. They were so powerful and they were making such a sweeping change that the people in power had to kill them. There was no other choice. And now everyone is waking up collectively. We're going to kill all the people. Collectively, we're going to kill everybody. Oh, wait, is that coronavirus? I don't know. But we ain't going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's like when someone wrote, Dr. Martin Luther King did it peacefully. I'm like, please don't go down that route. That was some people's only post. I said, if that's your only post, you're missing the point because he got assassinated. Please don't use him as an example of how people should protest. I'm not saying people need to be, burning down buildings, but it's just like, that's your only post though.
Right, but I mean, it's like he was cool with Malcolm X, and you know how Malcolm X was.
Right.
Malcolm X did not have a problem. He was cool, and also at the same time, it's like, yes, he was taking a more diplomatic and pragmatic approach in speaking and using his speech and things like protests and as a way and as a form to create change. But also, like, look at fucking Gandhi. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who take a more radical approach.
Mm-hmm.
And are they any less influential and any less powerful because, they set themselves on fire, or like because they did whatever? Like, I mean, even JFK, he just dared to be a president who was not trying to continue to further this racist narrative, and that got him killed. And he dared to be a president that was a little bit different, even just a little bit, during a time where people were not ready to accept that difference, and was killed for it. And we see that time and time again. And I think that what we need to learn about, especially about astrology, I think a lot of people should get into astrology because it does show us the patterns of how things play out in history, is we're in the age of Aquarius, but also we're in a period of time where there is a great opportunity for people to either become a part of this new world that we're building, where people actually are legitimately free, or they can stay in the old program and eventually die. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's not like die like we're gonna kill you or someone's gonna kill you. The way it's set up is those types of people, they get it when the collective energy is stronger than the people who want to stay in the old timelines. They get erased. They get erased. And we're shifting. So whether it's a race like you physically die, or your life becomes incredibly stagnant and you get stuck in a timeline where the same shit happens to you over and over again, you will get erased as we change and shift. And so you see that right now is a time for people to be kind, right? And respectful and educated. And being educated is actually noble and attractive for the first time in a while. It's something that people are looking for. It's really important for you to be someone who's, not necessarily all inclusive in that you're just letting any motherfucker in, but you're inclusive in the ways that matter. You're not judging people on their skin color or things that they wouldn't even be able to change if they wanted to. Like, they're like, I can't change that I came in with this genitalia. I can't change, or whatever. And then, are you inclusive with the fact, can you coexist with people who are different than you and it doesn't matter to you? Or do you need to be around people who are the same as you all the time for you to be able to be nice, be successful, be, yourself? Like, what does that say about you? I don't think it speaks about anybody else but you. And I think these things are coming forward for a lot of people. They want to say that they're inclusive, but the reality is that they don't really, those things are fronts so that they don't get chewed up by the internet and taken down. But it's like, if you're really about that shit, why would you need to even be nervous about it? If you're not somebody out here sexualizing women and being disrespectful to women, you don't even need to waste your breath trying to prove that you're somebody that needs to do that. Your life is a representation of it.
Exactly.
I'm not racist. I have one black friend, or my cousin's black, says the person who literally is looking to validate that they're not racist because they don't have any other proof other than the one person in their life or two or three people in their life that are of those. It's like you can't just use beings and human beings as validation for your character. That's on you. So show up as the person that you want to be, or fix it, figure it out, and but don't be in the front loud, like, I'm not this, I'm not racist.
Meanwhile, none of your pictures represent that. None of your pictures are diverse. The people you work with are not diverse. And I'm looking like, how are you still getting away with not having diversity? Like, it's not hard. It is not hard to have an event, to have people, guests on a podcast of diverse backgrounds. For, me to constantly see certain events where people look so similar, I'm like, no, you had to do this. There's no way.
You had an aesthetic you were trying to achieve.
Right. There's no way you can tell me, oh, well, it's just not many, fill in the blank demographic in this space. That's a lie. That is a lie.
Yeah.
So
I just couldn't find any black people.
Couldn't find any indigenous people. I couldn't find any black people. I couldn't find any Asian
there's
people.
There's not any out there. They're missing.
I'm like, last I checked, black and brown people are now the majority.
Yeah, y'all really out. Like, we outnumber y'all.
So it is really interesting. And just to do a recap, baneful magic, hexing, protection magic, everything under that umbrella, that's like a last resort. We practice discipline. Like I said, with my friend, I was in the bathroom and it just hit me, like I had my hands on the sink, like, whoa. And I knew I had to protect them. And that's exactly what I did. And now that person's no longer in their life. But that came after many times of my friend communicating with this person, and this person really did play off their kindness, and so that's something that we had to take responsibility for and understand that this does work. And if we are to do this, we really need to understand what we are doing. And in the process, we need to take a stance, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. There are a lot of people that are on their high horse, or maybe they just been told something for so long about a certain religion that they didn't realize that their religion did a smear campaign on the old ways.
Yes.
And what they're doing is really just a watered down version of what we are doing. Ooh. So, just really focus on that. It's okay to take a stance. It's not always easy. Yes, you will lose friends, but honestly, you're working towards a better life. And with the internet, you're going to find friends. Like I found the Glamour Witch.
Yes.
And I also listened to, I want to get him on the show, but I know he said he's a little shy, Marshall, the Southern, because his voice is so soothing, guys.
Really? Oh my gosh.
So soothing. Like I want him to read everything.
Oh my God, he's so amazing and so knowledgeable and just fun. Like I feel like I have a good time talking to him, and I'm so happy that you could be there for that live, because I really do feel like that live was something special. Super special. Like definitely.
When Corona is done, I just feel like we all need to like meet up somewhere.
Yes, I was like, I'm coming to Dallas. I'm gonna come see you.
Right.
Like, okay.
And listen, I'm from Philly, and Eagles and the Dallas, we got beef. So I'm gonna set that aside. I mean, I'm always, and I'm like, I take it like in a like a lighthearted way. Like I'm not one of those hardcore, like, forget you. I just like, oh, Dallas, who called you America's team? Like that's corny, So, you gotta put them on. You gotta put them on. You gotta test I gotta hold it down for Philly no matter where I go.
Yeah, you gotta check them.
But I just like, oh man, when this is over, we need to meet up, because
oh my God, yes,
like, he's just so kind. I never get tired of his posts, and
he's so
I'm just
amazing.
Like,
I mean, his TikTok is like, all his videos are just so aesthetically pleasing and so beautiful and knowledgeable, and he's just like, he's got so much flair and like beauty to everything that he does that it's just, I want to watch everything. Like I've
exactly. I want to watch
every single video that he's made like 4 or 5 times. Like he's so amazing. And then also he's a hairstylist. I'm like,
his hair is gorgeous. Okay, I mean, his hair. I'm like, she's like a Vidal Sassoon commercial.
I know.
His hair is gorgeous.
Yes. Seriously. You know, and I've gotten more messages and like comments about our talk together than any other person that I've had on my channel, and people just love that video, and I did too. Like, I feel like there was a lot of really just powerful things, and I think it's too because we were talking about such a controversial topic, which is, you know, something that every witch at some point, even if you're just like, I'm a white witch, which is like, all right, you know, even if you're at that place, there is a moment where you're faced with that kind of like internal dilemma, like, am I ever going to practice this? Am I going to learn about it? And people really love that. And me and him are on the same page, just like me and you are. It's just like, look, you know, do what you want to do, but like, also, like, don't be petty out here.
Right.
Petty ass bitch.
Right. Exactly. And people say that about me too. Right, I say, you know, it's an amplifier. If you've been kind-hearted with $100 in your bank account and your friend is in need and you give them $30, guess what? When you become a millionaire, you're going to do the same exact thing. But if you've been someone who's just, you know, nasty and cold-hearted, you're going to be a cold-hearted, nasty, lonely millionaire. Right. You know, it's just an amplifier. Money does not make people evil. It's an amplifier to what's really within them. Honestly, and, you know, do some people go astray? Of course, you know, they get exposed to things that they haven't gotten exposed to before. It doesn't make them a bad person. But what I'm talking about is, you know, how people treat people no matter what. You know, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
exactly. You know, and it really does. It's you, and you have to understand too, if you're a practitioner, you're worried about someone hexing you. Look at who they are as a person. You know, if you don't, and you know, also that's why things like divination and all those other things are really great, because they do allow you to see, like, is this a person that would hex me? You know, is this somebody who I need to be worried about? Before you just assume that person is going to do something or give your power away. And also, we can curse ourselves and hex ourselves with our words and the things that we repeatedly say over and over again.
I tell people all the time, stop saying things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, you know.
We can do it to ourselves and have to clear that. And you'll have to do the same process that you would do if someone were to curse you. You know, if you're doing uncrossing, you can cross yourself up from the things that you say or do, or who you hang around, and the energy that you kind of keep. And you have to do the same process that you would do if someone had done that against you intentionally, because our words are powerful and our energy is powerful. And it's before we start to think that everyone is after us, we have to really take like inventory of our lives and how we're showing up. And if we know we're showing up negatively every day in the morning, first thing I'm thinking is something, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, this is and that, like, something's going on. There's a shift that's happening, and something's happening. We need to make changes. So use responsibly. Hex responsibly.
Yes, use responsibly. Results may vary.
Exactly.
Any final words, Alexis?
Final words is, if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about magic and spell crafting and really getting into like properly like honing in your magic, I'm doing a master class, and that'll be this next coming week on the 22nd of November. If you're interested in being a part of that, I would love to have you there. And I'll be going more in depth on things like we just talked about tonight, but also how to just make sure that your spells hit with power every single time. So yeah, I would love to see you guys there. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, it was my pleasure. You know, it's so interesting because it's nice to connect with people online and to, you know, see them, you know, like the lives help. Like I said, I saw you on YouTube and I just saw that connection there. But yeah, it's great to have like-minded people. And I'm not saying we have to agree on everything all the time. That's crazy. But, you know, to just have that conversation, it's like, yeah, you know what? Let's talk about this because it's needed. That's great. I mean, I think stuff like that is priceless.
Right. Exactly. such a blessing. It really is. I mean, especially in 2020.
Yeah, right.
Just trying to get it where I can get it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Yes. And for all the listeners out there, I'm sending you so many blessings. I'm rooting for you as always. And remember to be kind to yourself until next time. As always, spiritual trailblazer, thank you for tuning in. Do make sure to stop by and visit me at tiamariejohnson.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Last but not least, be kind to yourself. I'm rooting for you, and I'm sending you so many blessings. Until next time.